when U.S. Army veteran Jake Turner bought a collapsing forest cabin for just $600. Everyone said the same thing. No one lasts a night in that place. Locals claimed it was cursed, haunted, abandoned for a reason no one dared to speak aloud. But Jake wasn't afraid of ghosts. After losing friends in the war and battling nightmares that never let him sleep, he feared only one thing: his own memories. So he packed what little he owned, brought his loyal retired K-9 partner Shadow, and drove deep into the mountains searching for silence. But the moment they arrived, the forest changed. The wind died, birds went silent, and Shadow, normally fearless, loyal, unshakable, suddenly stiffened, growling at the attic window as if something inside was staring back. But the moment Shadow stepped onto the cabin's porch, his fur rose, his teeth bared, and he stared at the attic with frozen, unblinking fear. Jake tried to laugh it off, but deep down, he felt it too. This place wasn't just old. It was hiding something. And on their very first night, while Jake repaired a wall, Shadow began clawing at a hidden panel, refusing to stop until a sealed wooden box slid into view. A box wrapped in rusted metal bands. Trembling on its own, Jake had survived war, but nothing prepared him for the secret this cabin had buried for decades. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Jake Turner had spent years trying to outrun his memories, but war had a way of following a man home. After returning from deployment, the noise of the city, the crowded streets, and the constant pressure of pretending he was fine became too much. So when he heard about a forgotten cabin deep in the woods, listed for only $600, he didn't hesitate. Peace wasn't cheap, but this place felt like a last chance at rebuilding himself. People in town warned him not to buy it, whispering that the cabin was haunted, cursed, or simply dangerous. Jake didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in silence. With his loyal retired K-9 partner, Shadow, he drove through miles of forest until the cabin appeared, small, weather-beaten, and swallowed by towering pine trees. The porch sagged. The chimney leaned. Snow crunched under their boots as they stepped closer. Shadow's nose twitched, his posture stiffening as if the wind carried something unfamiliar. Jake paused, studying the dark windows. The place looked abandoned, yet something about it felt watched. Still, he pushed the door open, determined to start fresh. What he didn't know was that this cabin held a secret waiting for him, and Shadow was the first to sense it. The cabin groaned softly as Jake pushed the door open, the hinges crying out from years of neglect. Dust floated through the air like tiny ghosts awakening from sleep. Jake set his backpack down and began unpacking tools, determined to repair the place before nightfall. Shadow wandered ahead, his paws silent on the creaking floorboards as he sniffed every corner with unusual caution. Jake hammered loose planks back into place and swept away layers of dirt. But his focus kept drifting to Shadow. The dog's tail wasn't wagging. If anything, it was low, stiff, and alert. At one point, Shadow froze near the narrow attic door, ears pointed forward, muscles coiled. A low, uneasy growl rumbled in his chest. "Easy, boy," Jake murmured, wiping sweat from his brow. "Just old wood." But then he heard it too, a faint tapping overhead, slow, deliberate, almost like footsteps dragging across the attic floor. Jake's hammer slipped from his hand. He held his breath, listening. Another tap, then a soft, scraping sound. The temperature in the room dipped, a sudden cold that pressed against his skin. The single bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered twice before steadying again. Shadow backed away from the attic door, the fur along his spine standing up straight. He positioned himself between Jake and the sound, protective, ready. Jake swallowed hard, convincing himself it was critters or shifting beams. Still, the unease gnawed at him. The cabin felt alive in a way he couldn't explain, as if it was waiting for night to fall before showing its true nature. And Shadow knew it'd morning. Jake convinced himself the strange noises were nothing more than rodents, branches, or his tired imagination. Determined to make the cabin livable, he grabbed his toolkit. Shadow followed close, his steps hesitant, as if he didn't trust the daylight any more than the night. Jake started repairing a cracked interior wall near the fireplace. The wood felt brittle, almost hollow. As he hammered a loose board back into place, Shadow suddenly stepped forward and pawed at the wall, one specific spot, his nails scraping urgently. Jake frowned. "What is it, boy?" Shadow's ears flattened. He whined, then pressed his nose firmly against the same section of wood. That's when Jake noticed it, an unusual echo. He tapped the wall again. Hollow, much deeper than it should have been. Curiosity prickled up his spine that he pried away one board. Then another. Dust burst out like trapped air escaping after decades of silence. Behind the old cabin logs sat a narrow, hidden compartment barely big enough for a person to crawl into. The space was dark, cramped, and smelled of damp earth and time. Inside it lay a small wooden box, not an ordinary one. Its surface was carved with strange military-style symbols and markings Jake didn't recognize. The metal bands wrapped around it were rusted and nearly black, like they'd been exposed to something corrosive. Shadow growled. Deep. Warning. Primal. Jake reached toward the box, but the dog stepped between him and the opening, blocking him with his body. Shadow didn't just sense danger. He was afraid that Jake's heartbeat quickened. Something was hidden here, something someone had never intended to be found. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the symbols on the wooden box meant something. They weren't decorative, they were deliberate, carved by someone with a steady hand and a heavy mind. So he drove back into town, Shadow sitting tense in the passenger seat, staring out the window as if watching the forest breathe behind them. Inside the small general store, Jake approached the only person who seemed old enough to know the cabin's past, Mr. Hargrove, a gray-bearded man who had lived in the area his entire life. When Jake mentioned the symbols, the old man's expression shifted from curiosity to dread. "You found that box?" he whispered, glancing around as if someone might overhear. "Son, that cabin belonged to a deserter soldier during the 1940s. Ran from his unit and hid out there. People said he buried something he didn't want the world to see." Jake frowned. What was inside? Hargrove shook his head slowly. "No one knows. Everyone who tried to open it either left the cabin within days or disappeared without a trace. That place ain't haunted, son. It's cursed by whatever that man hid." Jake left the store unsettled. Shadow growled softly beside him, confirming what Jake already feared. The box wasn't just old. It was dangerous. The forest felt different when Jake returned. Quieter, heavier, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Shadow leapt from the truck the moment Jake opened the door, immediately positioning himself between Jake and the cabin. His ears were flat, his body rigid. He didn't want to go inside, but Jake had come too far to turn back. The hidden compartment gaped like a mouth waiting to speak the moment Jake stepped inside. The wooden box sat exactly where he left it, untouched yet somehow expectant. Shadow growled, trying to block him again. But Jake gently pushed the dog aside, his breath steadying. "I need to know," he whispered as Jake reached for the box. A sudden burst of wind tore through the cabin, slamming the door shut. The bulb flickered violently. The box rattled, metal bands vibrating like something inside was struggling to get out. Shadow barked frantically, circling the box, but too afraid to get closer. Jake forced the latch. Rust cracked. The box shook one final time before falling still. He lifted the lid slowly. Inside, wrapped in a decayed cloth, lay three objects: a small leather-bound diary, a pair of military dog tags, and a tiny, blood-stained baby blanket. Jake's heart lurched. Shadow whined, backing away as if the truth itself was too heavy for the room. Jake lifted the diary with trembling hands. The pages were brittle, filled with frantic handwriting. The deserter hadn't been hiding treasure. He had been hiding guilt, and Shadow wasn't warning Jake about danger. He was warning him about a story too painful to stay buried. Jake stepped outside with the diary pressed to his chest, Shadow walking slowly beside him. The forest was silent, the breeze still, as if waiting for him to decide what came next. Shadow led him behind the cabin, stopping at a patch of uneven earth. He sat, refusing to move. Jake knelt, brushing away leaves, and saw it. A small, unmarked grave. The deserter had buried his own family here. The guilt had chained him to the cabin long after death. Jake bowed his head. No one should be forgotten like this. He spent the next hours giving the family a proper resting place. When the last stone was set, the air around the cabin shifted. Lighter, warmer, almost relieved. Shadow lay beside Jake, finally calm. the cabin was no longer haunted. It had been forgiven. If you felt this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.